All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking Dr. Robert Peterson's incredibly dense theology, but we're going to make it super accessible using three very powerful everyday metaphors. If you've ever found terms like justification or imputation to be kind of dry or maybe just hard to wrap your head around, you are definitely in the right place. We're taking these profound concepts about salvation and bringing them down to earth by looking at them through three distinct settings: the courtroom, the bank, and the family. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 5 key stops: the divine dilemma, the two-sided cross, the bank of heaven, what's affectionately called adoption's shy little sister, and finally the incredible shift from slaves to sons. Let's get moving. Starting right off of section 1, the divine dilemma. So we have to start with what honestly looks like a cosmic puzzle found in the very nature of God himself. How exactly can a loving God justify the ungodly? People are understandably perplexed by how a God of love could ever condemn anyone. And hey, they're right to point to 1 John chapter 4, which says God is love. But, as Dr. Peterson points out, folks often completely overlook what's written just a few chapters earlier. 1 John chapter 1, verse 5, flat out says, God is light, and there is absolutely no darkness in him. So here's the dilemma. If God is both absolute light, meaning perfectly holy, perfectly just, and absolute love, how can he possibly declare unrighteous sinners to be righteous without totally compromising his own moral integrity? I mean, how does a perfectly good judge just let the guilty walk out the front door? To solve that puzzle, we move to section 2, the two-sided cross. And this is exactly where we step into our first everyday metaphor, the legal framework of the courtroom. The answer to our dilemma lies in the absolute brilliance of Christ's cross, which completely changes our legal standing before the ultimate judge. It actually functions in two totally different directions. It works negatively to handle our guilt and positively to establish our right standing. It's not just about erasing a bad record, it's about providing a flawlessly perfect one. Looking at the negative aspect first, we hit this heavy theological word, propitiation. In Romans chapter 3, Paul tells us that God put Jesus forward as a propitiation by his blood. Basically, Jesus stepped right into our distress. He took the massive load of eternal wrath that we had coming to us and completely turned it away. He took the penalty, dying the death we should have died, and perfectly satisfied the absolute demands of justice. Now, on the positive side, Paul sets up this wild contrast between the first Adam, whose primal disobedience brought universal condemnation, and Christ, who he calls the second Adam. Christ's perfect obedience, all the way to his death on the cross, procures the exact righteousness we desperately need to be acquitted in the heavenly judgment. Theologian Douglas Moo makes a great point here. Being righteous in this context isn't just about being a morally upright person. It literally means being legally cleared of all charges in the courtroom of heaven. Okay, so if we're cleared of the charges, how exactly does that perfect record become ours? That brings us to section 3, the bank of heaven. Let's step out of the courtroom and into the bank. Dr. Peterson highlights something absolutely fascinating here. The word imputation isn't just some dusty religious jargon, it's literally a financial term, a commercial term about crediting an account. Think about it like opening up your banking app and seeing this massive, totally unearned deposit that just instantly zeroes out every single one of your debts. That is imputation. Scripture actually lays out this incredible three-way ledger transfer happening in real time. First, God credits Adam's primal sin to the human race. Second, God takes our sin and imputes it or transfers it directly to the crucified Christ. And third, and here is the absolute kicker, God credits Christ's flawless, perfect righteousness directly into our spiritual bank accounts. And this isn't just pulled from one isolated verse. Look at how these three foundational scriptures stack up: Romans 4, Romans 5, and 2 Corinthians 5. Put them together and you get the complete picture of how faith acts as the actual processing mechanism for this massive spiritual deposit. From Abraham simply believing God and having it credited to him, all the way to Christ becoming sin so that we might literally become the righteousness of God. Faith is how the transfer clears. Martin Luther actually had a brilliant phrase for this banking transaction. He called it the happy exchange. Just listen to the emotional weight of this quote. Christ takes our immense debt, which he absolutely did not owe, and hands over his boundless wealth, which we definitely did not earn. Because of this alien righteousness, meaning a righteousness completely outside of ourselves, God the Father looks at our account and declares us perfectly solvent. But the story doesn't end at the bank. Let's move into section 4, adoption's shy little sister. So we've been in the courtroom and we've been in the bank. Now we are heading home. See, justification usually gets all the historical press and the big theological debates. But Dr. Peterson affectionately calls adoption the warm and winsome, shy little sister of systematic theology. When God justifies us, he doesn't just hand us a legal pardon and say, okay, have a good life. Simultaneously, he adopts us. We aren't just cleared criminals anymore. We become fiercely loved children. Theologian J.I. Packer makes a really staggering assertion about this. He essentially says that if the ultimate fatherhood of God doesn't completely control your worship, your prayers, and your whole outlook on life, then you haven't truly grasped Christianity. Period. Everything that makes the New Testament distinctly Christian is summed up in the mind-blowing knowledge that the God of the universe is now your father. To truly feel the warmth of that family reality, we have to look at Section 5, From Slaves to Sons. We really have to understand the grim reality we were adopted out of. As Dr. Peterson emphasizes, we weren't just sad, helpless orphans wandering the streets looking for a home. The biblical reality is way darker. God had to dig us out of a much deeper pit. We were actual slaves. We were held in terrifying bondage to sin and under the elements of the world. We weren't just fatherless, we were owned by a cruel master. Because of that, the mechanism of adoption isn't just signing some paperwork, it is redemption. It's a full-blown, intense, three-step rescue mission. It moves us from a literal state of slavery, requires the payment of an astronomical ransom price, and finally launches us into the absolute freedom of being God's kids. And that ransom price? It was staggering. Galatians 3:13 lays it out clearly. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by literally becoming a curse for us. John Stott calls this the plainest statement in the entire New Testament on substitution. Christ absorbed the curse of the broken law entirely upon himself so that we could escape it and gain the full rights of heirs. Think about the weight of that for a second. The eternal, natural Son of God willingly went to the cross, endured the wrath of the courtroom, and emptied his heavenly bank account, all so that enslaved enemies could be pulled up to the family dinner table and welcomed. And the ultimate source behind all of this? Ephesians 1 tells us it is quite simply the astounding, predestining love of God the Father. So here's the question we have to walk away with today. Knowing the totally astronomical cost of this happy exchange, how does your permanent shift in identity from a slave to a beloved child actually change the way you step into tomorrow? You've been acquitted in the courtroom, your account is overflowing at the bank, and your seat is permanently reserved at the family table. So are you living out of the abundance of that adoption? It's definitely something to profoundly consider. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep pursuing that deeper understanding.